Good afternoon. Call back to order the June 4th, 2019 meeting of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Supervisors Frost,
Here.
Natoli,
Here.
Peters,
Here.
Cerna,
Here.
Kennedy,
Here.
and you have a quorum.
Next item.
Item 44 is the appeal of a tree violation for a property located at 3929 Minnesota Avenue in the Fair Oaks community. The appellant is Marco Andrade, and that's it.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Leanne Moffett, your County Planning Director, here to present the item. You previously heard the original materials and staff presentation on May 14th. You heard a presentation from myself as well as the appellant, Mr. Andrade, who is here again today. You continued the item, asking for a meeting between staff convened by Michael Penrose of the CEO's office, as well as other staff with Mr. Andrade. We did hold that meeting on May 16th. And we have written that up in your board materials for today. In addition, I have done a fair amount of research and encapsulated a timeline in attachment 2 to your board report of all the steps back and forth along the way. So I won't go through that line by line, but that is there for your review. In summary, staff is continuing to recommend that you deny the appeal of the tree violation based on this additional review and based on the meeting. Mr. Andrade continues to be concerned that staff was non-responsive. Staff feels that Mr. Andrade did not respond in a timely manner and did have other mechanisms in order to reach staff. So that pretty much summarizes the staff report. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions of the board? Then I believe we'll hear from Mr. Andrade.
I'm pretty much,
Right between the two.
sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
I said I was going to come here. I wasn't going to get mad. I was going to accept the same type of thing. They don't, he said he did the research. He said that my counterpart, that Mr. Hurley went out there and Claire told him that he needed to talk to the Tree Foundation. We had this conversation over and over. Why would I continue to go down to tell them that I wanted to pay it off to get closure to this? And again, I still come up with the same thing. What is a reasonable timeline once we've accepted to close this and saying, hey, we're going to pay it to do this? What's an acceptable timeline? I can't get that. And then the other thing is that it comes down to Claire's word. It's unacceptable. I've lost a lot of money. I have every right to be upset. I'm not upset with them personally, you personally, but the county there's no accountability. There's nothing. I said I need to get this paid off. I need to get this done. And I got nothing. I called. I went to the county supervisor, John Durborough, Todd. I went to all of them. Why do I still get the same thing? It's just over and over and over. And even going to her, if she could not change those fees, I should have never even talked to her. I should have came here to begin with, rather than go through all that process and wasted time and emotion. It's a waste of time. So I'll accept whatever you guys give, and I'm gonna walk away, but I'm not gonna tell you, I'm mad. I'm very mad. I lost a lot of money. And it's personal to me now because he's retiring. He doesn't care anymore about what me and my family and what we've lost. And I keep hearing the same thing about Claire. And every time I called, I went to the county. There's other tree people, but guess what they said? You have to deal with Claire. And I can't get a hold of Claire, so what am I to do? What am I to do, guys? I'm not just coming up here. I don't want to come up here and be mad or be upset for no reason. I just wanted closure. So again, I'm coming. I'll accept whatever it is, but I promise you this: I do lots of properties, and if this continues to go like this, I will continue to come back and to fight for what's right for us on the other side, because this penalty system is not fair. That tree thrives. It does everything. And even when she said, she gave us that writing, when I paid it, she came back again and said there was more stuff that she told me I needed to have. And I asked for it in writing. She didn't give it to me. She told me no. So when was I going to get clarity on what was really what I needed to do to get it close? There was never no end to it. There was always something. When I tried to get it closed, I couldn't get it, not even from the boss. So from up here all the way down, it's understandable. I see it now. There's no reasonable timeline to get stuff done. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Mr. Andrade, when you, just to be clear, when you specifically said that that tree continues to thrive, you're talking about the large oak tree with the trench?
Yes, beautiful, better than it's ever been.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? I have no questions from the public. Is there anyone in the public who would like to address this issue? And we'll bring it back.
Chair?
Yes, sir.
I actually do have a question for Leanne. I think I was one of the people, one of the board members last time that suggested a timeline would be helpful. So can you help me? So it sounds like the way Mr. Andrade has characterized his grievance, and step in here if you think I'm mischaracterizing it, but it sounds like he believes that he tried to do what he was being asked to do or supposed to do, and the delay was a function, again, according to him, of not getting clear direction back from staff. So where in this timeline, and maybe if you just reference it by paragraph number, where's that breakdown occur?
Right. So initially, on line 7, back in June of 2017, planning sends detailed information to Mr. Andrade about the fact that there is a violation and what he needs to do. And his fundamental responsibility is to provide us with a site plan, potentially hire an arborist, and give us information that we can review.
The violation being that there was grading beneath the drip line.
Yes, we received multiple neighborhood complaints.
Okay.
That there was impacts to trees occurring, and so it was a complaint-driven visit that was made out to the site that did document that there was a violation. So we put in writing as of June 30th what his responsibility was to do, which was to provide us with enough information that we could assess the impacts and see what was going to happen on site as a result of the house. We also provided him with information about how he's supposed to make sure that there's no construction debris around any of the oak trees, and how to protect the oak trees during the construction of the home. And then we put a hold on the final issuance of the building permit, working with building, as the mechanism to ensure that there was ultimately a response. We did not hear back from Mr. Hurley, and it was then you go around to lines 14, 15, 16, where Mr. Andrade is...
Which is a year later.
More than a year later.
Yeah.
He is seeking to clear the final holds on the building permit.
Okay.
And he goes out to building inspection. The information that he received, our website, the business cards, they provide a variety of options. Visiting the Downtown Business Assistance Center, we have a tree phone line, we have a tree email, in addition to the personal email and voicemail of Ms. Williams, who is the primary contact with regard to trees. It seems likely and apparent that Mr. Andrade did seek to try to reach Ms. Williams. It was a period which she was working about half-time. She was out a bit. But there's no indication, nor has he ever asserted, that he tried to come downtown, that he tried to call the tree line, which was maintained by other staff people, that he did the tree email. So there are multiple ways of reaching us, and he did not seek in that little window there in like October when he was trying to resolve this. He did not avail himself of any of those mechanisms to reach us.
So what is the standard protocol when, in an instance like this where you mentioned it's complaint driven, so our staff go out on site based on that complaint, they see what they determine to be a violation.
Yes.
right? So a clock starts, correct me if I'm wrong, but a clock starts ticking at some point, at that point?
No, what we simply do, because, I mean, we have limited staff, so we are complaint driven, we put a hold on the building permit, knowing that eventually, presumably, he's going to want to clear that hold, and then at which point in time, when he's seeking to clear the hold, he'll
Sure.
do what he needs to do.
But at that initial contact, I'll call it, between our site inspection folks and the builder, at that point, is there a suggestion, a recommendation, some advice that's given verbally about how to go about clearing the issue? Is it spelled out in greater detail? Is there a form that is handed to the individual that describes how you get this cleared?
Yes, so in the written materials which were included in your prior staff report, indicate how to clear the site, which is give us a site plan, that you can hire an arborist to estimate the impacts to the trees. We can review that. Alternatively, as a courtesy, we can come out to the site and estimate those tree impacts. But that can take a few weeks for us to schedule. But there are other options for him to clear it, including hiring his own arborist and having us review that.
So from that June 30th, 2017 initial contact, there was silence. There was nothing.
Well, in the timeline on line 8, you can see that our staff recalls that there was some discussion of the violation over the phone, that Mr. Andrade felt that the fees were too high. I don't have that in documentation. We had that from notes, from staff notes. And then there's no follow-up.
Okay, so some of the initial reaction from that June 30th interaction was a grievance expressed about the value of the fines.
Right, and then
Cost of the fines.
on line 11, there's more neighbor complaint that a tree was removed, and so the direction was not followed. The trees were not protected, even though he had been informed that he needed a tree permit in order to remove a tree. And despite the initial contact, an additional tree was removed completely. So typically with someone we're working with, we'll try to make sure that they get the permit in advance. There was also impacts to the third tree as a result of the driveway. I don't know if we'd worked with them, whether there was a way to reduce those impacts or not. We didn't have that dialogue.
There's 2 trees you said that were cut, ma'am? Cut down?
One tree.
Okay.
One tree.
Sorry, I thought you said 2. I do have an arborist report. I will bring it back even after I told you for that tree that we cut, it was dead.
So that's the 15-inch diameter at breast height tree.
Yeah.
So that's a violation after the initial contact about the first violation, which was the trenching beneath the drip line.
Yes.
Okay.
Then there was paving of the driveway over the drip line of one oak tree and the removal of a third tree.
Okay. I think I understand. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No,
Thank you, Mr. Andrade.
I would just suggest in the future that when you hear from the county staff, which you did in June of 17, that you immediately get into it. And I agree, I understand you think the fees are too high, but you can't ignore them.
I didn't think
because
the
this is
fees were
what-
too high till after we couldn't get in contact with them for a long time and we lost that initial sale.
Yeah.
So you guys keep coming back to that point. Sorry, I thought I turned on my phone. I apologize. But in reality, I never complained about the fees until I didn't. We lost that first sale, and it
Well, it
says
says
that.
June 30th, 2017, you
No,
complained
that's not-
about
that's
fees to
incorrect.
be too high.
That's incorrect. She's talking about when she first sent the paperwork to me.
I think the point is they notified you there was a problem with the trees, and that's the time to sit down and talk about it and find out what's going on.
Well, if I'm dealing with the county and they're coming out and I'm thinking one hand knows what the other is doing, and I was told to only go to Gady for that permit because we had an original stop work order. So as far as I'm concerned, again, we've went through all of this and your guys' questions, they're noted. But my biggest problem is not that. My biggest problem is when we said, okay, we're gonna pay, what can we do? We need to pay this the fastest way possible to get done with this. Miss Williams came out to the property and told us, she would give us a number. And we told her that we needed that number. She said that she told David to get in touch with the Tree Foundation to save $300. At that point in time, my question to them is even to him, and why I get so upset, it's like, why would I go down to try to pay it? Why would I go down there to try to give a check and say, hey, I need to pay this? Well, we have to get a hold of Claire. So they called Claire. And every time they say we got all these different tree people, every time I called, it was who I needed to talk to was Claire, the tree lady. There wasn't multiple tree ladies. It was Claire, the tree lady. So again, I understand what you're saying, Ms. Peters, but
But it's a year later. I mean,
No,
this
but
started in June of
problem-
2017, and when Claire was out, it was September and October of 18.
The biggest problem was from when we tried to get it in in this year, in the last part of 18, when I was trying to get it closed because we're trying to get it signed off because we had it in contract and we need to get final permits and all that stuff done for their inspection period, and we lost a sale. So of course I'm gonna try to do that to get it done because we're in contract. So I'm trying to provide what they need so we can close that, so we can pay them, pay everybody, get paid off and be done and limit our losses. But the thing is that you guys it's hard for me because you guys keep overlooking the fact I'm saying, okay, fine, slap me on the hand, that's fine. I did wrong. We did wrong. I didn't do this like I should have. And yes, there are things I would do over. Of course there is. But the thing is also too, is I'm not going to say, oh, well, I thought this, I thought that. I said, listen, we're accountable for what we did. But where are you guys accountable for the timelines of when we're saying, find me. What do I have to do? I need to get this done. What's the quickest way? How do I do this? And for her and you guys still to this day, there's no timeline. They revert back to June 17th. He was negligent to get this stuff done. We gave him this stuff. I got that. I'm okay with that. My thing is that I have carrying costs while I'm waiting for the county to give me when I'm saying, okay, I'm guilty. Give it to me. What do I got to pay? Let me pay it. That's unacceptable.
I'm looking at the notes from even December of 2018 where you're still discussing with staff lowering the fee, that you don't agree.
Why did I ask him to lower the fee? Did you read my permit or my email? Did you read that? Why did I ask him to lower the fee? Because we lost a sale. And we lost a sale, and I was frustrated because of that timeline, because I couldn't get in touch with her to get a payoff, to get it done, because they wouldn't let me pay them. I had my checkbook saying, here, let me pay you. The county, let me pay you. We need something in writing from Claire Williams. Claire Williams has to give us this. That's what I needed. So basically, they called John Doorborough. All these people, all of them, I called all of them. And John is like, he can tell you to this day, John Doorborough told me this is crazy. He understands, but he can't get in job. I can't get involved that deep, but whether I agree or not, I don't want to have no problems with my coworkers. That's how bad it's been. It's been so bad. I'm not trying to throw him under the bus, but I literally would go spend time. I had to go sit in Gady and say, I'm not leaving until we can get this done. I need this done, guys. So again, you're saying, yeah, of course, when I lost the sale, I was still saying it's too low, but still I said, you know what? I got to pay it. We're in contract again. I said, hey, I got to pay it, but yeah, if I can get it down, because I went from a $740,000 contract to a $700,000 contract, yes, I lost a lot of money, and I had to pay the difference. So yes, I'm upset, but you still, if you do anything today, make them accountable for getting back to people on time and doing that part. If somebody's saying, hey, I'm accountable, I'll do mine, where's their accountability? There's none. And even don't waste people's time. Don't waste people's time and have them going back and forth to the same thing if you can't do nothing for them. And I'm mad and I'm hurt. This is very stressful. I spent so much money, you guys, and I know to you guys, I'm not saying you don't care, to them, man, this guy's one of the nicest guys that I probably ever met. But when he said to me, he said, hey, you missed something. Dave Hurley heard this. She told Dave Hurley to go there. That was just another out to me. And I'm thinking, man, this is crazy. These guys really don't care. They're going to try and get the quickest, easiest way out of it. But that's wrong. So regardless of what happens, I got to say what I wanted to say. I appreciate you guys hearing, but this is wrong. There's nothing right about this. I deserve penalties. I definitely do. I definitely do. I have no problem with that. But this penalty is not even right. And there's all kinds of things I can bring up, like the trees, where she said you can't have the trees, rocks around the trees. So I drove around the county of Sacramento, and I've got where the county of Sacramento takes care of trees, where there's rocks all the way around the trees. And guess what? Those trees are okay. But everything that Claire could find wrong for me to have wrong with my house, guess what? It happened. Claire never asked me for an arborist thing when I cut that little tree down in the front, but it's okay. That's my fault. I'm okay with that.
Oh, okay, then let's stop talking about that. And I think what you came to complain about today was responsiveness to getting a payoff amount. Is that what you're wanting to
Definitely.
tell us about?
Yeah, definitely, yes.
Okay. If you could wait a minute, can I ask Mr. Penrose if you can explain that to me?
So I think you guys have a good assessment of the timeline here overall. In that time when we spent this hour and a half this past week or so behind, the one thing that I identified as a potential deficiency that we haven't really responded in terms of deficiencies here, but is that period between October 30th, 2018, when Claire met in the field with the other owner, his partner, about what the obligations were and what the penalties were. There was some lack of clear communication about who needed to do what when between there and when the actual bill, I'm using the wrong term, right? When that was actually issued, which was about a month later. And so I think in response to the timeliness issue, if the communication had been more clear between all the various people involved, that we would have likely been able to prepare that invoice more quickly. What happened is that there was this Sacramento Tree Foundation nuance that came in, and there was some lack of clarity about who's going to do what when. That happened with his partner, right? And so, as I understand it, in hearing all the detail on this, is that Claire was waiting for the partner, this guy David, who's not here today, to respond back to her about what was going to happen relative to the Tree Foundation option for payment. That never really happened. The partner, Mr. Hurley, wrote an email to Claire, but he sent it to the wrong address. So there was this gap of communication in that period, right? That was one. At the same time, Mr. Andrade is going to the building department, trying his best to see if he can get to the right person to get this thing resolved so he can make his payment. And that really was kind of going to the wrong place. Not that he was doing it wrong, but it was going to the building department people instead of being at the tree place. And so that's where, as I look at the details of people trying to get this last little period done, which is what he's talking about, that I see some deficiencies in the communication and the really clear guidance on this is what you will do now, and this is when, and I think that extended that period a little bit, because as I understand it, Claire didn't hear anything after a few weeks, and as was identified here, she said, I'm going to issue that document. And he's expressed his frustration about being able to get through to Claire during that period of time, those weeks. So I think there's something to be harvested here in terms of our administration of these violations, in terms of clarity from county staff to say, okay, you need to do X, right? As opposed to having a little bit of a waiting period. And that really was a third leg, frankly, as to Mr. Andre. That's as I saw it, as I went through it, and I can't say that I have every little fact, but that this whole thing about that, 4 or 5 week period of being able to get the invoice, I think partially hinges on those kinds of three-way communications that were happening relative to this particular claim. So that's the only thing I can add.
In the attachment, that's on page 3, it's lines 19, 20, and 21. So the site visit was done on October 30th. They indicated their desire to pay the Tree Foundation in order to save some small amount of fees. They email her, but they use the wrong email address. And they, instead of an L, they put in a 1, or Mr. Hurley does. So then when we don't hear back, Ms. Williams finally issues the invoice on November 20th because she's never heard back from them at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question regarding the notices. Did all the communications happen via email, or was there a formal letter that summarized the requirements that we had, that the county had of him, so that he had a formal notice sent to him?
They were email correspondence. They are intended to be formal. I mean, it's a form email, but it was done via email instead of snail mail or U.S.
But it was
Postal
email
Service.
from 2017 to 2018. There was open communications, and then all of a sudden in 2018, they somehow lost the email.
I don't know.
There were a lot of communications.
We know that
over-
they got it because we have record that there was conversation after the email went, so I don't think that there's lack of clarity about whether they received the initial email, because there was follow-up calls as a result of the initial email notice of violation.
But the gap in communication was a year after, so there were ongoing email communications back and forth.
No, they didn't reach out to us after this June period until, well, we
After
did
June
it
17, June 2017?
For a year.
for a year. Well, we did the site visit
13
in
months.
June and identified an additional violation. So,
And there wasn't an established back and forth communication via email?
no. They were not reaching out to us. We had the hold. We were waiting for them to clear it.
But it was clear that they had received it because you
Yes.
received communications that they got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So hearing what I just heard Mr. Penrose say and what you just mentioned, Leanne, I'm actually more confused. I mean, it seems like it was a series of errors, and I'll say it, I think some perhaps on our part for, quite frankly, working with the property owner. Well, I understand there's two parties that represent the property. So the way I heard it described just now is there was initial contact with one property owner about the violation. Then there was another property owner that then comes into the mix, and there's kind of the first series of events that make this confusing, because now you have assumptions being made that the same timely substantive communication is being made to the same people at the same time, and clearly that didn't happen. So my question is this: this is an $11,400
Fine.
fine. How much of that fine is attributable to the timeline?
The fees are an impact fee from the Oaks.
Okay.
There is no penalty, there is no fine. The fee amounts are the same, whether
Okay.
they'd come in and gotten a permit to begin with. Nothing has been assessed above and beyond had they walked in June and got the permit versus now.
Okay, so
It's-
we've heard Mr. Is it Andrade? Andrade. Heard Mr. Andrade say several times, back then he wanted to pay the fine. Today he wants to pay the fine. He's frustrated because of this mess of this communication mess. But there's nothing about the mess itself in terms of the timeline that affects the value. The value of the fine's always been the value of the fine.
And he has
Value
already
is
paid the fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure which. I'm
The
trying to
dollar
get
amount is
my-
the dollar amount.
My hands around what's to be had from all this at this point.
Right, and I would say further, we pass the money on to the Tree Foundation. The county doesn't keep the money. Planning receives no dollar
Okay.
amount.
All right.
Supervisor Peters.
Thank you. Listening to all three people talk, I'm going to suggest we split the difference and give him half his money back.
I'll second that if that's
This-
the motion.
Can we do that? I mean, Krista, can we do that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I just want to get clarification.
Yeah, you can.
For a cost?
The fee, I believe you can legally do that. I don't think there would
It's
be
going
an
to
appeal.
be complicated on our end, but,
Yeah.
we had some confusion on our part, but,
We simply will give less money to the Tree Foundation.
yeah. So, you okay with that?
Yes.
So
Not exactly everything you wanted? but it kind of addresses errors on both sides, I think.
And I think you heard it, both staff, and I just tried to point out that, you know, there's some acknowledgement that things could have been handled better in terms of the communication. It had to do with the circumstance of different parties hearing different things at different times, and people being out, and misspelled email addresses. I mean, that's enough for me to kind of conclude that, yeah, it could have been handled a lot better.
And I'll say further that, you know, we all get these issues that come in. I mean, we're a big organization. Things happen.
Yeah.
But it's probably, we're not perfect. And it's probably a good time for us to take a look at our forms and our procedures again and to continue to refine and get better. Maybe bring in a retired annuitant to do it.
We actually have the tree code under revised. They're revising it
Well, I
now.
know, but as an example,
Yeah.
I've had code enforcement penalty notifications come in with 3 or 4 different phone numbers on one sheet of paper. Confusing to people who aren't used to dealing with government on a daily basis. You know, it's not to say that they weren't, you know, legitimate fines and violations, but we could probably refine our communication with the public to make it a little less confusing. That's all I'm saying. So, we have a motion and a second?
Okay, so this is, we're not going to, how do we do this, Krista? We're denying half of it.
Right, so I guess you're granting the
Granting the
appeal and directing staff
Reducing
to
the fine.
Refund
Yeah.
$5,700.
50% of the fee that he paid.
Okay,
That's
that's my motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Unanimous vote.
Okay, you're going to get half your money back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
For the next 2 items, I was told that I need to call item 46 first instead of item 45. Item 46 is the 65th Street, Florin Road, AMPM tentative parcel map to divide 13.8 acres into 2 lots, a use permit to allow a 24-hour automobile service station and convenience store, a special development permit to allow a reduced landscape planter and increased signage, and a design review on 1.25 acres for a property located at northwest corner of 65th Street and Florin Road intersection in the South Sacramento community.
Good afternoon, members of the board. I have a PowerPoint presentation. This is the proposed new ARCO at the corner of 65th and Florin. The site is in the current Burlington Coat Factory parking lot in the South Sacramento community. The overall site, including the Burlington Coat Factory, is a little over 13 acres. The request before you today is for a tentative parcel map, a use permit, a special development permit, a design review, and then there's a related request for alcohol sales, a PCN item that I will be presenting subsequently and separately. Let's see. Oh, you know what? This is, can I get the other PowerPoint up? I'm sorry. I actually need the PowerPoint for item 46.
I think they just put it up.
Sorry about that.
They're working on it.
All right, there we go. Again, here we go. This is the project site aerial and a photo of the location. Looking north at the project site with Florin Road in the forefront and 65th Street perpendicular off to the right. The tentative parcel map would split off a 1.25 acre corner to create a separate site, Lot B, for a convenience store, drive-through restaurant, and gasoline service station. This is probably the best view of the project for the 24-hour convenience store, 24-hour drive-through restaurant, and 24-hour gasoline service station. So the rendering on the right would show the site with the proposed landscaping improvements and the building and canopy installed.
Could I ask a question, Mr. Chair, just on that site plan there? you have a very busy RT bus stop there. A lot of activity in the area. There's public services and certainly a number of other activities would draw folks there. I guess I'm curious as you go through this is that you show the low water use landscaping there, but you don't show a direct path to that bus stop. There's a direct path in the sense you got to walk through the driveway, through the curb cut, and I would be willing to bet within days, if this is approved, that landscaping being installed will be trampled. And so I think there needs to be some consideration. And I also would suggest, again, I don't want to too deep into this, but I know that RT has done a much better job and certainly has worked very hard to keep our bus stops clean and to make sure trash is empty and so forth. But you are building in a fast food restaurant and a convenience store within, you talk in a faint whisper and be here at the front door. And so I guess my suggestion, it's not uncommon, we have this elsewhere, but that you have an opportunity here, and I think some consideration for how that interfaces with RT, but also just the traffic pattern. I got to be willing to bet people are going to walk across the parking lot through the landscaping and is going to trample that, and before you know it's going to be all worn out. And so I see no pathway there in that rendering that gets you there, and not that you can dictate people are going to use that, but Leanne, I just think that's really important. And that's a heavily used bus stop, as I'm sure my colleagues know, and obviously the Supervisor Kennedy's district, but.
Right. So in a little bit of explanation, and that may not change the fact that you still want a walkway there, but just there is a walkway over more on the 65th Street side off on the right. That's where the ADA path of travel, I believe, is the flat walkway. There is a requirement for 20% landscaping, and so I think the applicant was trying to address the county landscaping requirement. So this landscape planter in the front here is wider than normal. I think it's around probably at least maybe 25 feet or so. So it's a fairly deep planter. I think we thought it was good to have that out on the Florin Road side, that
I
would
think
look
that's
more
fine.
appealing.
I'm just talking about
but
the
it may
realities
need
of what that's going to look like in
walkway,
a few
yeah.
days after constructed. So,
Okay.
and maybe the applicant needs to have sort of a plaza there and then make up for the landscaping elsewhere. I mean, they're doing a deal with Burlington, and that's a big site with a lot of parking area, and obviously you have to have turn radiuses and so forth. But I just think the reality is that it'll look nice when it goes in, and it won't be very long. Just knowing people's travel patterns before
Right.
that's trampled, and and then bark picks up litter if that's a correct portrayal there. I just think there needs to be some other thought into that. I'm glad they're going to do 20%, and that's a good thing. But I just think that this doesn't reflect the reality of what that use is going to look like before too long.
Got it. Okay.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Chair.
This is the slide that has to do with the landscaping. So it's actually a 20-foot landscaping planter on the 65th Street side. So instead of 25 feet. So that one's a little narrower, and then the wider landscaping planter is on the Florin Road side. And they are seeking to match landscaping that has been installed in front of Burlington Coat Factory, and that's what that photo on the right there is, which does have the barks and the shrubs. There's also a special development permit for signage and design review. Some of this has to do with the standard signage on the ARCO, so I'm not going to belabor that point. And we are looking at the sign code as it relates to a lot of the standard signage on the pumps, but this addresses that. But the pumps are pretty standard, any ARCO that you would see. That's again what this slide is about, having to do with the signage. So with regard to the design review of the structure, they do have a fair amount of articulation and stonework on the bottom and relief. There is the drive-through that goes around the back. So the back side will have for the future fast food restaurant, it will have the pickup window and payment on the back. But the back side also has some trellises for vertical, either shrub or vines, as well as continuing the stonework on the bottom. And then the site plan also has some additional vertical elements where vines will be grown up to distinguish the drive-through aisle from the existing driveway entrance into the Burlington Coat Factory. So there'll be some vertical elements between those, the fast food drive aisle and the driveway to help make for green area in a vertical way.
Okay, Supervisor Serna.
Thank you. So I'm trying to understand the north elevation, at least.
Yes. The one in the middle there?
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm looking at what I have on my iPad versus what you have up on the screen. The one on my iPad doesn't show the pavement or the location of the fast food on the north, where you'd have the exchange of food and money. Is it? I'm trying to look at the west elevation. It looks like it kind of has a window that pops out or something. I mean, it's a little odd because you have a drive aisle for the drive-through that passes a non-drive-through use, and then at the tail end, that's where the transactions occur, correct?
So there's a convenience store that would be on the east end of the building, and that's the Arco convenience store.
Right.
And so the drive aisle goes past the back of the convenience store.
Right.
And then the west end of the building is going to be a future fast food restaurant. And that is where the window is, where you're going to pay for your food and pick up your food.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
So there's two separate uses in the building.
Sure. Do we have an example of something like this in the county yet?
We do have multiple uses. I know at the new Arco at Bradshaw. I will admit I haven't actually gone through any of those drive-throughs to see how they work. But
where the drive-throughs is basically passing up one user in the same building to get to the end user, which is the actual fast food, right?
Yeah, I think we do have other examples.
It actually allows for more queuing too, doesn't it?
A lot more queuing. There's a ton of queuing in it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So the key points in summary here, with regard to site access, is the Florin Road access will be right in, right out only. There is a current left in and right out from the 65th Street side, where there's a current drive aisle into the Burlington Coat Factory around the backside. That would be an alternate access. There are two internal driveways through the existing shopping center, and there's going to be reciprocal access agreements between the two. There is a CEQA document that was done with a fairly thorough traffic analysis there, looking at all the truck radiuses and how the gas is delivered, and concluded that that would all be fine and that there's not significant traffic impacts. Noise was evaluated from the restaurant, from the amplified speaker. Again, there is a small amount of RD40 zoning across Florin and down to the west. It's kind of the opposite side of where the speaker and the drive-through are, blocked by the building.
That was great community planning, by the way. That was built way back in the 70s, but to put apartments in between a car lot and a liquor store, that made a heck of a lot of sense.
Right. So the recommendations on the use permit and the other associated entitlements are approval with regard to design review. The Community Planning Advisory Council considered this in February, and they recommended approval on a 5-0 vote. The Planning Commission met on April 8th and also recommend approval on a 5-0 vote. So
Resident Tolley.
Yeah, just a question on the lighting. You're getting a parcel map here, so if I recall correctly, the Burlington site obviously is really large and has some lighting, but are we going to, as a part of this, get lighting upgrades to the entirety of the parcel that's being affected here, not just the Arco?
There are substantial lighting, and when we get to the PCN item, it's actually somewhat difficult to read in the board materials, but there's also a security camera plan, and they have a ton of security cameras inside and outside, as well as the lighting. So there's...
But for the Burlington property, that's what I'm talking about.
I see, for the
we're creating a
Burlington
parcel.
property.
We have a parcel map request before us.
Right.
Burlington is involved, or whoever the underlying owner is there. And that's my question, is that you still have a fairly large sea of parking along Florin and 65th behind the building that is adjacent to the county registrar of voters and sheriff's service station, and then even to the west of the building. I mean, that was the old Montgomery Ward facility years ago. And so I guess my question is that there's an entitlement that affects and creates 2 new parcels, and I don't know what latitude we have or not, but is the lighting sufficient, separate and apart from the AM/PM use permit that's before us, because we are approving or considering a parcel map here. And so I want to know what the lighting upgrades are for the Burlington property, because I would imagine they're a much older standard, and I guess that's my question though. So what is what's
You
the
know,
answer?
I did not see in the analysis, and I will have to check with staff. I don't believe we sought to have full lighting and landscaping upgrades to the Burlington Coat Factory. I don't know off the top of my head whether they meet full landscape standards. I would think they meet lighting standards because their improvements aren't that old. But I'll check with staff.
Okay, if you
here
could
in a
check on
minute.
that. Again, I understand the landscaping, it's an older parking lot, and there's
Right.
intermittent trees, and they did some out front.
Right, there has been some upgrades recently, so
Okay.
I'll
yeah, I
check
saw
on the
that. Yeah,
lighting.
I'm just curious about the lighting though. Okay, thanks.
Supervisor Serna.
Thank you. Leanne, if you can go back to the illustrative plan. Thank you.
Oh, there we go.
So I noticed that you have a trash enclosure for a dumpster, presumably, off to the left there.
Yes.
So have all the clearances been confirmed for the operation of a truck to go in there with their forks, I presume, pull it out and
Yes.
then lift it up with a canopy that close?
Yes, that there is an analysis of both the trash pickup as well as the 2-axle gas truck delivery in the traffic study.
Okay.
And I'm not sure I know off the top of my
It
head
just
what
looks
page
like
that
from
is.
this
but,
view, it's going to be a little tight.
yeah, I did read it in the secret document. So it's on page 69 of attachment 11. There is an analysis of the refuse truck and trash enclosure pickup in the secret document.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is the applicant here, like to speak?
Applicant just dropped her stuff almost.
That's all right.
Hi, I'm Leslie Burnside with Barg Housing Consulting Engineers. I did want to start out by saying we have agreed to all the conditions of approval on both this item and on the PCN. I don't really have a prepared presentation. We're just mostly here to answer, I'm mostly here to answer questions.
Any questions? I think the staff report was pretty thorough, so
I think it is. Thank you very much.
thank you. Okay, I have no cards on this, so I'll bring it back to the board, and I will say that I'm going to probably not have to speak a lot on the next item because a lot of it's going to be covered here, and that's just an overall impression of, I've worked very closely with this applicant. I will say that I've even checked with the City of Woodland folks and where they have an operation going. It's a family-owned business. They have from day one agreed to every condition that I would throw at them, whether it was lighting, security. You can see there's a very thorough security plan. Whether it was conditions placed upon, the next item, the PCN. They've just been really an applicant that has been a real pleasure to work with and has a good track record. And I will move staff recommendation. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Mr. Chair, could I just have an answer? I'm fine with supporting the motion, but because we're, in this motion, we're approving the tentative parcel map, and I just
Right.
want to know the question on the lighting.
We did not do an analysis or require upgrades to the lighting or the landscaping on the Burlington
So
Coat
everything on
Factory
the
sites.
remainder site, which is the large site, stays the same.
Right.
Okay, it's clear for the record, thanks.
Not everybody at this location has been as easy to work with.
No, well, I know that, and that's why but you have their interest.
Right.
When you've got their parcel in the midst here, not just AM, PM. That's why I was asking the question, so. Because I know that, Mr. Kennedy, over the years, that's been the case in that neighborhood, is you get some very cooperative folks and others that.
Yeah. I think because we didn't do the analysis, I'm not sure whether they meet the lighting standards or not.
Okay,
They may, we just didn't do that analysis.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Okay, item 45 is the AMPM PCN ABC license hearing to determine whether public convenience would be served by an issuance of a Type 20 liquor license to the AMPM located at the northwest corner of Florin Road and 65th Street in the South Sacramento community.
All right, so again, you know the location. So if I could have the prior PowerPoint, thank you. Run through this quickly. This is the standard 1 mile radius map that we do for all of these. The key points, they're requesting off-sale beer and wine license, which is a Type 20. The site is in both over-concentrated and high-crime reporting district. The census tract, based on population, allows for 2 off-sale licenses, and there are currently 5, and this would increase that to 6. And then within the 1 mile radius, there are a substantial number of licenses. This is always a trade-off between getting positive new investment, and we did find the design to be relatively high quality and an improvement. It's always a challenge in these areas where you have over-concentration, trying to figure out whether to recommend approval of that positive investment or not. But in this case, the South Sacramento CPAC did end up recommending approval on a 5-0 with 1 absent basis without any issues being raised and no members of the public attending. The Sheriff's Department was also willing to withdraw their opposition with the application of all of the standard conditions, which are included alcohol sales only between the hours of 7 and 10, no single sales, and there is a fairly detailed lighting and a substantial amount of security cameras both inside and outside of the building. And so with that, staff ended up coming down on the side of recommending approval of the PCN.
And I will say, as far as the sheriff goes, from the beginning, there has been very little opposition of any kind to the PCN itself. It was they were concerned with the traffic it would generate, and it might interfere with their operations up further on 65th. And we did a specific traffic impact report analysis of would it impact the sheriff's operations, and the conclusion was no, it would not. And at that point, the sheriff dropped all opposition.
Mr. Chair, just,
Yes.
I saw there was some outreach to the Islamic school, which is north of the sheriff's substation there.
Yes.
Was there ever any contact made with anybody there?
They did not respond to our planning staff outreach. We did not receive anything
Have you
back.
heard from anybody there?
Nope.
Okay,
And this has been talked about quite vocally in the area for 2 years.
right. Okay, thanks.
Any questions? Okay, I'll move staff recommendation. We have a motion and a second, please vote.
Unanimous vote.
Oh, no.
Item 47.
I don't have mine either.
Yeah. Okay. You have it?
These are mine.
Yeah. You have that though, right?
I'll call the names out here.
Okay. Great, all right.
Madam Clerk, we may have somebody here on off agenda. I don't know if did they sign up? Oh, he hasn't. So you just need to get a form. I just want to let him know. I thought I recognized him in the audience, so. Okay, good. Thanks. Sure.
We'll go ahead and take that first before we get to appointments. So if you can come down, you can fill out the app, just state your name, and you can fill out the form and give it to the clerk afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got some information here I can leave with you as well. Thank you for taking me, especially off the agenda. My name is Jordan Kirkendall. I'm the general manager with Elk Grove Toyota. And I'm here today to just express some frustration and ask for some assistance with a construction project that we currently have going. So right now we're undergoing a construction project to expand our service facility in Elk Grove in the Auto Mall. And one condition that the County of Sacramento is requiring is there are 3 water lateral lines that come off of the water main, and the county is requiring that we essentially cut those lateral lines off and cap the water main. My concern is that those, and the reason being is that the county is saying it's a public health issue because those water laterals have stagnant water in them, and that can cause bacteria to breed and so on and so forth. And while that may or may not be true, our concern is that that land was purchased nearly 20 years ago with those water laterals in place approved by the county. And now that the land is being developed upon, it's a public health issue, and it's a burden to the ownership group of Elk Grove Toyota to remove those water lateral lines. I've met with the county several times, the water agency board, several conversations with Supervisor Natoli, is very familiar with the situation. So I'm just here to formally express my concern with the issue and ask if there may be any help for getting the water agency to back down from this requirement.
Okay. Mr. Chair, again, I recognize this isn't on the agenda, and I've talked with Mike Penrose and Michael Peterson, and certainly with Mr. Kuykendall and with Mr. Schneider, Blake Schneider. And I would just say very briefly, recognize it's not on the agenda, that with the initial installation of streets in the Elk Grove Auto Mall, obviously now in the city of Elk Grove, but the county water agency is the purveyor of water. There was a requirement that this board approved generally throughout the county more than a dozen years ago that requires, in a number of cases, the abandonment. In this case, there are 3. And it's a significant cost. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of $35,000, give or take. And so I think there is a formal appeal process through the water agency, and I'm not familiar, I told Jordan that, with that particular process. I also told him he could speak off agenda if he chose to, which he has. There's some time constraints here, but I know it's something that certainly he and the Schneider family feel very strongly about, and likewise our county staff does. And so I can leave it at that, recognizing that it's off agenda. And I know I've talked to the county executive about this as well, and looked at some other avenues, but thus far I think we've come down where we're not going to budge, and certainly I think the Schneider family feels very, very strongly about this as well, and they've invested millions of dollars in their facility, and you have yet to open because they can't get sign-off until this issue gets resolved. So I'll leave it at that for today's purposes, and I don't know if we maybe ask for a report back when it could properly be on the agenda. So yeah, I'll turn to you, Mike.
I think Supervisor Natoli mentioned, we have discussed this. The avenues that are available, it is in City of Elk Grove. One of the case that they brought forward, we didn't think it was germane to the issue at hand. What they're asking for is a $30,000 subsidy, and we have talked to City of Elk Grove about it. It's in their jurisdiction. The appeal process, I'm not familiar with it. I'll work with County Council, but I believe we've given the answer to the Schneider family on what our position is and why we're asking for it. And so I would look for board direction if you want us to bring it back to relieve it, because everybody else in that zone has to do what this family is being asked to do.
I'm good.
Tracy's getting nervous.
Would not.
Yeah. Everybody has to pay that fee. I don't, I think if you want a subsidy, you should ask the city of Elk Grove.
To be clear, I'm not asking for a subsidy.
he's
I'm
not.
asking
And I think
to
if
be
we can-
exempt from that word.
Actually,
You are.
I do want to make it clear, because to get there, you are asking for a subsidy. You are asking the county not to do something that's money in your pocket, and that's a subsidy.
So we have to cut this off. This is a non-agendized item, and we're going pretty far off in the discussion.
I would agree.
Okay, to bring it back though, that was my point about if there a formal appeal. No, don't shake your head. Let me ask my
I know.
question. I'm just going to say, so can we direct that he could file the formal appeal if that's what they chose to do through the water agency? We sit as a water agency board, because that isn't clear to me what that process, because I don't know we've ever had any of these appealed. So there must be some process to appeal back to this board. That's all I wanted to ask about. So if we can make sure that's clear so that he and Mr. Schneider then can determine how they get this back to the board appropriately for our consideration, if there is any. So that's all I wanted to. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So you'll give us that process? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
good. Thanks.
With that, we will go to separate matters.
Okay, item 47, your nominations. You are continuing to June 18th, the South Sacramento Area Community Planning Advisory Council, continuing to July 23rd, Cemetery Advisory Commission, Cordova Community Planning Advisory Council, County Service Area 4B, Slough House, Wilton, Consumnes, County Service Area 4C, Delta, In-Home Supportive Services Advisory Committee, and the Sacramento County Alcohol, Drug, and Advisory Board. For your first item, you have the Area 4 Agency on Aging Advisory Council. Mr. Kennedy?
Yes, Chiefs recommend Edward Scheidegger.
Developmental Disabilities Planning and Advisory Council.
Continue to July 16th.
Okay. Equal Employment Opportunity Advisory Committee.
Chiefs recommend Christina Cervantes.
Natomas Community Planning Advisory Council, Mr. Cerna.
Please continue to July 16th.
And Orangeville Community Planning Advisory Council, Ms. Frost.
Please reappoint Sue Galster and Bob Crawford.
Okay. And then Sacramento County Employees Retirement Board, Mr. Kennedy.
Chiefs recommend reappointment of Richard Fowler.
That concludes your nominations.
Okay. Anything else?
County Executive.
Board member comments? Or you want to do county exec first? I have some comments.
Yeah, so I was asking if he has any comment.
Nope, I think I've said enough.
All right.
Okay.
Board members?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and maybe this is a precursor to a report back next week, but it's recently come to my attention, and I wanted to share this with this board in this context because it's certainly a bit troubling, and I want to make sure that we have full information when we take up some pending budget discussions next week. And this relates to, it's my understanding that a decision's been made to purchase and deploy tasers or stun guns in shelter, at the animal shelter. And I understand certainly the need to have public safety, certainly for our employees as well as for the general public. But I want to say, in light of the direction we have gone in recent years to improve the live release rate, to improve animal care, to improve our outreach to the community, certainly to work with our partners and working with our staff, which has resulted in an improved live release rate. I guess I posed a question, and I don't know whether you were aware, Mr. Gill, or not. I don't know that you were, how a decision was arrived at that we were going to, in shelter, deploy and issue, and I guess train folks in the use of tasers. I don't know what data supports that decision, if in fact that's been made, and I don't think it's in keeping with best practices. I know you and I, and certainly others, have had a chance to visit the Austin shelter, and in light of the progress that we have made, I find it, very distressing if in fact that's what we've done. And I haven't, again, I don't know whether anybody on this board was made apprised of that.
I think Supervisor Tony, I was not aware, not necessarily that I would have known that fact, but let me research that and talk to the department head and the deputy county exec, and we'll have a report back to the board. Okay,
and if I could just, and I appreciate your response, that I would want to know what the data is, what any review would suggest that was, a wise decision to do.
Let me first ascertain we did it.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah, let me find out if we did it or not.
Okay, and then now the reason why I said it might tie back to budget is that in light of other strains on our budget and certainly needs for animal wellness, and I know what you're going to be bringing forward, and certainly the conversation we're going to have about a whole lot of programs, if in fact this purchase was made, how in light of all the other competing priorities we got there. But I think it's the policy issue that I really want to have a conversation around. And so,
no, understood.
Okay.
Let me find out more about it.
All right, very good, thanks.
Supervisor Frost.
I was delighted to attend the Sacramento Tree Foundation's Tree Hero Awards this week and was able to fill in on behalf of Chair Kennedy, who was en route traveling and wasn't able to accept this award. I was excited to accept the Legacy Award on behalf of the Sacramento County Parks, Fair Oaks, Bluff Blue Oak. And this picture doesn't really do the tree very much, it doesn't do it justice, because that tree is actually 100 feet above the water line, and it's really living a perfect example of living life on the edge. Half of the tree is on solid ground, and the other half is precariously surviving, and it's the most beautiful tree. And I was excited to be able to accept this award on behalf of the Sacramento County Parks, and want to congratulate them for receiving it and share it with NAV to pass on to them. But I wanted everyone to see that amazing tree. I don't know how long it's going to hang in there, but
We have, this tree has been in front of us. Recently, if you remember, the gentleman who owns a property that's closest to the bottom and off to the right, and I've been out there several times on that tree, or right next to it, because it looks like it's going to go anytime. But he has pictures of kids up in the tree at 10 o'clock at night, drunk, and doing other things that drunk teenagers do late at night.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah.
A lot of dexterity there.
Well, yes, and splinters. It is a big deal when the area down below had a monument developed. You have to climb up to get to this tree. It was explained to me in depth about how important this tree is to the Fair Oaks neighborhood, and so I'm surprised to see it made it through this rainy winter.
I hope no one's walking below it. It could fall.
Sitting in it.
It could fall on top of someone.
I know.
Actually, it's a great steelhead hole right below it.
Oh.
Well, be careful, it might fall on you.
True story.
Well, the tree was recognized before it went.
Yeah.
And I think it has a few more years to go, so that was exciting to receive the award.
Thank you, Supervisor Frost, for stepping in. I was unexpectedly delayed in beautiful Fresno, California, so I appreciate you being there.
I had one comment.
Supervisor Cernan and then
Oh, sorry.
Supervisor Peterson.
So I just wanted to congratulate again in public and acknowledge in public our colleague, Mr. Natoli. 2 Saturdays ago, had a chance to join he and his wife Brenda at the new Don and Brendan Natoli Community Park and the Vineyard community in our county. It's a beautiful park and a lot of great turnout, great morning, and very appropriately named for both Don and Brenda. So I just wanted to again congratulate you on that.
Thanks for congratulatory notes from my colleagues as well. So that's very kind. Thanks.
Supervisor Frost. Or Supervisor Peters, sorry.
I know, we look alike, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to say congratulations to Sellen's Restaurant that
Yes.
just got a Michelin star, and it was interesting to hear it on national news as Arden Arcade, California. So that was that was just kind of fun, and we'll have a resolution pretty soon. But I wanted to note it today.
That's very cool.
Okay, is that all? Thank you all. It's been a pleasure.